This is CBN Newswatch.
And thanks for joining us for CBN Newswatch. I'm Heather Sells. Israel is preparing for tomorrow's elections, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced over the weekend that if he is reelected, he would declare that the Israeli government is sovereign over Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Palestinian leaders condemned Netanyahu's decision, while others applauded it. Our Jerusalem bureau chief Chris Mitchell has the story.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu made the announcement during a televised interview.
We will go to the next stage in applying Israeli sovereignty in the settlements. But I don't make a difference between the settlement blocks and the isolated settlements because from my perspective, any point of settlement is Israeli and we have responsibility towards them as the Israeli government. I will not uproot anyone and I will not transfer sovereignty to the Palestinians. When we abandon territories, Islamic extremism emerges immediately and slaughters us, and I won't give them the heart of the state of Israel.
Netanyahu's announcement means that large Jewish communities, like here in Ma'ale Adumim, and other smaller communities throughout what is known as the West Bank, would be part of Israel in any future negotiations with the Palestinian Authority. Palestinian leaders warned it would destroy the peace process.
At the end of the day, this is the scenario, and this is where they think they can dictate a solution by destroying the concept of two states.
While Erekat said the International Criminal Court should address the matter, some Israelis rejoiced.
Great to annex it. It belongs to the state of Israel. 42,000 people live here. We'll not give up on this place. This will not be like Gaza, which was given back, and now rockets are being fired on Sderot. I'm in favor of annexing it for the state of Israel.
Others doubted.
There's nothing to be happy about. I don't believe Netanyahu or our mayor.
The last-minute campaign push will likely win Netanyahu's support among the right. But whether he wins on Tuesday's elections will be up to the rest of Israeli voters. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Ma'ale Adumim.
CBN's Middle East bureau chief Chris Mitchell joins us now with more. Chris, what role do you think the Trump administration played in this announcement, and how do you think it will affect the Middle East peace plan?
Well, I think they had a lot to do with it. Just a few weeks ago, maybe about 10 days ago, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu was in the White House. That's when they announced the declaring that Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. There was an article in the Jerusalem Post this morning that said that Netanyahu had talked about this at the White House, that they were aware of this. And so I think they had a lot to do with this. And I think the Trump administration actually seems to have had a lot to do with the influence on the Israeli election. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was here just a little while ago. Netanyahu was over at the White House. The peace plan, what impact it's going to have on that, I think we're going to be surprised with the way it is. You hear talks about how it's going to have a regional influence to it, that Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt are all going to be part of this. And it seems like the Palestinians are really being put on the outside of this, Heather, especially with this latest announcement that Prime Minister Netanyahu says that all Jewish communities in the West Bank are under Israeli sovereignty.
Well, it's interesting, of course, the timing of it all. It's a bold announcement. It comes at the last minute. How does it speak to how competitive this race is?
Very competitive. Right now, Netanyahu, just a little while ago, he was not far away from here in the Bureau. He was in the Jerusalem open-air market called the Shuk. He was pleading with Likudniks, his political party, to go out and vote. He believes that there's a lot of complacency among his political constituency. So he wants to get people out. The latest poll had the Blue and White Party, the other major party, ahead by about 32 seats to 27 seats. And so that's critical, Heather, because if the Blue and White does get more seats or mandates than the Likud party, Netanyahu's party, then it would be up to the president of Israel to decide who is going to be the one to form the next coalition government. And if the Blue and White party gets several more seats than Likud, it could be Benny Gantz instead of Benjamin Netanyahu choosing the next government here in Israel.
Chris, what do you see is really at stake? What are the competing visions between Netanyahu and the Blue and White?
Well, one of the competing visions would be about the peace plan. And I think the peace plan, they have talked about it, they meaning the Trump administration, I think has talked about it with the Netanyahu government over here very closely. So I think that would be a major difference. If the blue and white party gets in, I think they would look at the peace plan in perhaps a far different way than the Likud or the Netanyahu government. So I think that's at stake. When you look at the wider Middle East, I think you'll see unanimity on a lot of the parties, Likud, blue and white, perhaps across the political spectrum, thinking that Iran is the #1 enemy. And I think a lot of people see that as something that all Israelis can agree with, that we need to stop Iran from a nuclear weapon or from getting a military front there on the Golan Heights and inside Syria.
Well, really a historic election. Chris Mitchell, thanks for your insights.
You're welcome, Heather.
The U.S. has temporarily withdrawn troops from Libya. Footage posted on social media shows an American vessel leaving a site near Tripoli. On Sunday, a top military official said the move comes due to security conditions on the ground as a Libyan military commander's forces advance towards the capital, clashing with rival militias. A small group of American troops has been in Libya in recent years, helping local forces combat ISIS. It is unclear how many troops have withdrawn and how many remain inside the country. Well, the White House today significantly ramped up pressure on the Islamic Republic of Iran in a move that is sure to escalate already heightened tensions with the U.S. The Trump administration designated the regime's elite military force as a foreign terrorist group. And CBN senior international correspondent George Thomas joins us now with the details. George.
President Trump said the designation recognizes the reality that Iran is the leading state sponsor of terrorism. And at the heart of that terror apparatus, the administration claims is the Islamic regime's Revolutionary Guard Corps, known as IRGC. Made up of hundreds of thousands of members, the IRGC runs numerous businesses in Iran and across the region. In a statement, the president said the Revolutionary Guard is the regime's primary means of directing and implementing its global terrorist campaign, and promotes terrorism as a tool of statecraft. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the United States will no longer tolerate Iran's continued efforts to destabilize the Middle East.
For 40 years, the Islamic Republic's Revolutionary Guard Corps has actively engaged in terrorism and created, supported, and directed other terrorist groups. The IRGC masquerades as a legitimate military organization, but none of us should be fooled. It regularly violates the laws of armed conflict. It plans, organizes, and executes terror campaigns all around the world.
So, George, what does this designation do specifically?
Well, it is really unclear at the moment how the administration will target the Revolutionary Guard, because, as I said, it is a huge operation with tens of thousands of members and enormous business and military interests. For now, the designation freezes any assets IRGC may have here in the United States and bans any American from doing business with the group. Also, any individual who has done business with the Guard will be denied entry into the United States. All this gets a little complicated because this could potentially include European and Asian companies that routinely do business with many of the Guard's various entities around the region as well as around the world.
And what have we heard from Tehran today on this?
Well, as expected, Heather, the regime obviously isn't taking too kindly to the designation. Moments after the announcement, Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif called the U.S. forces to be put on Iran's list of terror groups. In fact, the head of the IRGC, Major General Mohammad Ali Jafari, went even further and warned that U.S. troops in the region are now targets. On Sunday, General Jafari said, quote, "If the Americans take such a stubborn measure and endanger our national security, we will put in place countermeasures in line." And he added that U.S. forces will, quote, "no longer enjoy calm in the region." Heather, as you know, the U.S. has troops stationed close by in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. And Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said today that this designation goes into effect next week.
A lot of concern. Thank you, George.
You're most welcome.
Well, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen will be leaving her position as of this Wednesday. The president announced her departure via Twitter late Sunday, and he announced that U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Kevin McAleenan will become the acting head of the department. The split is reportedly over his growing frustration with the border and what he sees as Nielsen's inability to curb the uptick in illegal immigration from Central America. Nielsen told reporters today that she fully supports Trump's goal to secure the border.
I've spent the last 24 hours since yesterday talking with government officials, with administration officials, members of Congress to ensure a smooth transition.
And joining us now with more is David Inserra, a policy analyst on homeland security issues for the Washington, D.C.-based Heritage Foundation. David, we know from Border Patrol that March was a record month at the border with an estimated 100,000 apprehensions. What difference might a new head of Homeland Security make in dealing with a crisis?
Yeah, no, this is going to be a real challenge for the next head of Homeland Security, because the reality is the problems remain the same. We have some loopholes in our laws. We have a weak asylum system. And to really challenge these, to change these problems and to change the way we're doing business, we need Congress to step up. That's not something that just any Secretary of Homeland Security can fix. So we really need Congress to step up and do its job.
I was in San Diego last week talking with Border Patrol, and the chief there said they're regularly having to divert agents from the border to help assist all these families coming over. And in one case, they had people on the Mexico side actually drop 2 children over the wall while Border Patrol agents assisted them. Then 10 people jumped the wall at another location and fled. What can you tell us about this wave of migration and how it threatens our security at the border right now?
Yeah, so this is exactly right. We're hearing this phenomena across the border. The reality is right now is if you show up as a family unit, if you show up as an unaccompanied child, we're basically required to release you. And people know that. So what's happening is people are coming with families, they're coming with children, and then we respond to that, and we have to take care of these families, we have to take care of these children, and then the drug cartels just go in the other direction and carry out their dastardly business, whatever that might be. So it's bad for our security, and it's bad for controlling our borders.
You were mentioning earlier that this really is a legal issue, something that our current laws are encouraging when they encourage families to come over, knowing they'll be allowed to stay until a court date months, maybe even years later from now. What kind of momentum do you see on the Hill right now in regards to actually dealing with this?
Yeah, unfortunately, we've seen very little. Even under the Republican administration and Republican Congress, we didn't take action for 2 years. And now there's a Democratic House, and some members of the Democratic House are, the abolish ICE types. They don't see these loopholes as bugs. They see them as features. They think these are good things that we should be allowing anyone in who wants to come in. So unfortunately, it does not appear that we're taking this crisis at the border very seriously in Congress right now.
And where do you see all this headed, David, if Congress continues to avoid taking action on this?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see more of the same. We're going to see more people at the border, increasing numbers. It's going to be more families, more children. So more of these very vulnerable people are going to be coming to our border. And then unfortunately, we're going to catch them, but we're going to have nowhere to detain them. And we're not even allowed to detain many of them. So we're just going to release them. So we're just going to see increasing number of illegal immigration at our border and more people being allowed in, unfortunately.
Really a lot of concerns. David Inserra with Heritage, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And we will have more on this story and other headlines from our Washington bureau this evening on Faith Nation. You can watch it here on the CBN News Channel. Coming up, why we are seeing historically low numbers of refugees to the United States and what it means for the country.
CBN presents The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
We're going to talk about some of the incredible promises God has made to His children.
In Pat Robertson's newest teaching, you'll discover the I Wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation, and see amazing stories of God's promises in action.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Break free from stress and despair.
The Lord doesn't want you to live in fear, but to know the rewards given to those who love God.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
The Trump administration is welcoming historically low numbers of refugees to the United States, and this year may be the lowest yet. In 2016, 85,000 refugees arrived in the U.S., but this year, projections from World Relief show just a little over 24,000 are expected. Worldwide, there are currently 25 million refugees and 68 million people who are forcibly displaced. World Relief, an evangelical nonprofit that works with refugees, says these numbers have huge ramifications for those persecuted for their faith. And joining us now to discuss is Matthew Soerens, who serves as U.S. Director of Church Mobilization for World Relief and also as the National Coordinator for the Evangelical Immigration Table. Matthew, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Heather.
The U.S. actually set the cap on refugees for this year at 30,000. So why does it look like just 24,000 will be admitted?
Well, we're basing those projections based on the first half of the federal fiscal year. So that ended at the end of March. And in the first half of the year, we're just over 12,000 refugees who've arrived. So we're projecting there that unless the pace increases, which we would be very pleased by, we're not going to get even to 25,000, despite the ceiling set by the president back in October of 30,000.
And why do you think the pace is so slow at this point in time?
That's probably a better question for the State Department and other parts of the federal government than for me. Our role at World Relief is we receive the families that are approved by our government. We meet them at the airport with a team from a local church. But we have heard that there's been a lot of new bureaucracy added that's making things slower. And that's having an impact on refugees of various backgrounds, including persecuted Christians and other religious minorities who are persecuted for their faith, who have not been able to come to the U.S.
Yes, talk about those who are persecuted for their faith. What are you hearing from them? How hard a time are they having coming here? You know, what are they doing if they can't come to the U.S.?
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation because there's really not a great option for people. I mean, we're talking, for example, about Christians from Iraq. Just 3 years ago in fiscal year 2016, there was more than 1,500 Iraqi Christians who were able to come to the United States as refugees through the U.S. Refugee Resettlement Program. And this is a country where, tragically, our government says Christians are facing genocide in Iraq. So far in fiscal year 2018, the numbers are not anywhere near there. Only about 41 Christians have been able to come to the U.S. And, you know, if that doesn't pick up, it'll be less. It'll be much lower numbers, probably somewhere around 80, 82 for the year. That's a decline of about 95% from 3 years ago. And, you know, we interact with some of those family members who are already here in the U.S., who came maybe 3, 4 years ago, who are desperately concerned about their loved ones who, because of their faith in Jesus, have been forced to flee their country. I mean, their lives were at risk. And they're often in very difficult circumstances in that next country that they fled to, where they may be living in a refugee camp or not authorized to work, but trying to make ends meet. And also often not in a country with total religious freedom either. So they're desperate for the hope and the freedom to practice their faith in the U.S. and be with their family.
I know it's a concern to a lot of believers here in the U.S. Talk about the U.S. lowering its refugee numbers and what that means for our relationship with other countries and what that looks like in terms of our world standing. We're known in many ways and for many years for accepting refugees.
Yeah, you know, historically, the United States has taken more refugees through resettlement, where we have proactively invited people because they've been persecuted in their countries of origin, whether for their faith or a political opinion or ethnicity. We've historically taken more than any other single country in the world. And I think that's something that most Americans are proud of. You know, it's consistent with our Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor. Last year was the first year that is actually not true. Canada took significantly more than the roughly 23,000 refugees that the United States took in last year. And this year will probably be the same, that Canada will actually take more than the U.S., even though they have an overall population that's, you know, roughly a tenth of what the United States is. So I'm grateful for the Canadians that they're stepping up here, but I really would hope that the U.S. would do more. in part because that gives us the leverage to insist to other countries that they do more as well, to say to our allies around the world that they need to protect religious freedom in their own countries, that they need to provide safe haven for those who are fleeing because of their faith, whether that's because they're Christians or they're Jewish or they're Yazidis or other religious minorities or Muslims in Burma, the Rohingya, any place where people are persecuted because of their religious faith. We think it's important that they have a safe haven, and we hope the U.S. will continue to play that role for at least a small portion of persecuted religious minorities, and that we can use that to leverage to insist that other countries do their part as well.
A lot of ramifications either way for what we do. Matthew Soerens with World Relief, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Heather.
After the break, how CBN's Superbook helped one Vietnamese boy overcome his addiction to violent video games.
Parents, the Superbook Bible app is a great way to get your child reading the Bible, because in today's busy world, we can use some help. The free Superbook Bible app has fun stuff your kids will love. They'll have a blast learning the Bible, playing great games, watching cool videos, discovering heroes in the Bible. They'll have fun while they learn God's Word. The Superbook Kids Bible app, available now.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Discover the I wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I wills of God, the latest teaching from Pat Robertson.
Scientists tell us that excessive video gaming affects brain development in children. It can lead to attention deficit disorder and cause difficulties in managing emotions. That may explain why an 11-year-old Vietnamese boy's addiction to violent video games led him to thoughts of suicide. But all of that changed when CBN's animated Bible series helped him overcome his addiction. Lucille Toulousan brings us that story from Hanoi.
Minh Viet's addiction to playing violent video games began at 8 years old. And since then, he's been at it for 2 hours each day.
My eyes blink so much.
More alarming than the eye twitching is how these games led Minh Viet to think about suicide. One time came after his mother scolded him and took away his iPad.
And cry and want to commit suicide. Jump off the floor or...
Did you see something like that in the... Huh?
Yes, video games like they jump off the floor and...
He said that I will suicide. He cannot do what the adults expect him to do. He feels that he failure.
As a Christian, Minh Viet's mother, Ngoc Anh, knew that prayer and the Word of God could solve her son's problem. She also knew that Minh Viet needed something that would catch his attention just like the video games. That is why Ngoc Anh is so thankful Superbook has come to Vietnam and is in her own language.
Chào Giang và Gizmo.
He loved Superbook very much. He shift from video game to the Superbook. Then he understand more about the Bible. And sometimes he said to me that he feel he very sinful and God have saved him. He was touched by God. And in the school, he get very much improvement.
Through Superbook, Minh Viet has learned how much Jesus loves him.
I love Jesus because he saved me many times.
Here in Vietnam, 7,000 children are learning about the Word of God through Superbook. CBN Vietnam is praying that more churches will use the Superbook curriculum so that children who have been deceived by the devil like Minh Viet can be saved.
Minh Viet invites his friends to the Superbook classes, especially those who need to break free from video gaming.
I've got friends in Saigon and I told him stop playing games and watch Superbook instead.
Lucille Talusan, CBN News, Hanoi.
And before we go to break, here is a look at what's trending on CBNnews.com.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Hello, I'm Terry Meeuwsen. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
And a reminder to check out our CBN News Daily Rundown podcast with Caitlin Burke. She gives a behind-the-scenes look at a key story in the news every day, and you can find that at cbnnews.com. On the show tab, click on its title to listen and subscribe. And that is it for this edition of Newswatch. You can find more on the issues that you care about most at cbnnews.com. And you can watch CBN News programs anytime on our CBN News channel. Plus, tell us what you think about the stories that you have seen here by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope that you will join us next time. Have a great day.